Good evening, Mayor and members of the Council. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here tonight. As indicated, my name is Gary Giroux. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer for the County of Los Angeles. And won't repeat some of the things that Mr. Galliani said. We are very collaborative with the South Bay Clean Power Program. Just want to explain what we're doing in the county and invite you to participate there as well. I don't know that I need to spend a lot of time talking about what CCA is. It sounds like you're well versed, but I'll take a second to do that, talk about some of the benefits as analyzed by our business plan, some of the risks. We want to be transparent and open with cities that there are indeed risks and what those are and how we might mitigate them. Talk about the JPA document itself a little bit and then some next steps.
I hate to interrupt, but I really think you should explain because there's a bunch of people. We have certain knowledge, but people in the audience as well as those watching on television may really appreciate it.
Sure.
An explanation doesn't have to be the $1,000 explanation, but at least give us that $50 one.
I can do that. Absolutely. The graph probably explains it as well as anything, which is to look at how utilities are currently structured. And today, you're under Southern California Edison territory, and they do all of the services on behalf of residents and businesses, on behalf of all the customers. Under the CCA model, a portion of that work actually shifts to a local government or a local government entity like a joint powers agency. And that entity takes on three specific functions and only those functions. One, it is responsible for procuring power on behalf of its customers, on behalf of its residents, on behalf of the businesses within its community. So we actually go out, hire a power procurement manager who assesses what the load does, what the needs are, and buys power or we generate power to match that load. That's part one. Part two is we set rates. Because we're the ones buying the power, we're able to set the rates for that power. And that is done collectively through the Joint Powers Agency. That authority has a governing body. That governing body is the one that actually sets the rates. And the purpose for that is to bring that rate-making authority down to the local level. Today, Southern California Edison goes to the PUC in San Francisco 4 times a year. Typically, the rates change constantly, and it's a somewhat opaque and remote rate-making process. And then the third part that the CCA takes on,
the rate-making process is opaque,
is the
not transparent,
so
and the details are not specific.
Edison's customer programs, but we'll have our own energy efficiency programs, our own PV incentive programs, our electric vehicle incentive programs to supplement and support what we feel are our needs in our communities, and that's a key component. Edison continues to maintain the transmission and distribution system. They also continue to maintain the billing system. So they actually will send out the bills. On that bill, there'll be a line item for the CCA power procurement charge. And then they do the meter reading. So that's basically how it works. The key reason, or one of the key reasons, there's really 4, but the key reason that communities are interested, and if I've gone around the county of Los Angeles to council meetings like this, a primary driver is lower cost energy for our residents and for our businesses. And so we had a feasibility study done, looked at what it would cost to procure power on behalf of our residents and our businesses, and what it would cost to actually deliver those services vis-a-vis Edison. And this breaks it down by rate class, but you can see that on average, we would see about a 5% reduction of energy rates across the board. It's simply the level that Edison is providing
for all the boondoggles.
And they're at about 28% renewable today, maybe 30. At a 50% renewable level, we could still see a 4% reduction in rates overall, and this is net rates, not just the power procurement charge. And at 100%, should communities decide they want 100%, they would see a 6% increase. But that's a good driver. A lot of people see that as a benefit to the residents and the businesses. We certainly do in the county. We have
these are all projections that are true.
$16 million energy bill. 5% of that is pretty significant. The other thing you can do then is that opens up. So our consultant did an economic modeling, said, okay, if you now save $20 million
okay, so there's a reduction in costs.
in the community, how does that affect economic development? So that's money back in consumers' pockets, whether it's residents or businesses, and that's money to spend on other things or to invest in their business. And so there's a multiplier effect to that. That's clearly a key benefit. But as Mr. Galani talked about, there's also the direct jobs benefit of actually going out and building new local renewable energy projects. And so we see the need for a number of those projects in order to serve the load, and that will actually provide local jobs both in the construction and operation. The other, and probably the primary impetus for the whole law, the state law that created this, was consumer choice. Today, consumers, the cities who buy from Edison, our residents, our businesses, have no choice as to where they get their power. They can only buy from Edison.
This is Obamacare for
The
the energy
legislature
industry.
wanted to have consumers have a choice. We wanted to also avoid the debacle of the previous deregulation, and they said, we trust local governments to do right by their citizens. If they're willing to serve in that capacity, then we'll give the community choice program to them. And so that's really where this program started from. Residents, businesses, even the governments themselves have the ability always to go back to Edison. So it is a consumer choice program. We're now just opening up the market to a second competitor. And that's good for everybody. The other is, of course, and I've talked about it, the local control. So that's built in. And we missed a slide here, which was the greenhouse gas benefits. Somehow it didn't pop up, and I don't know what happened to it, but a key element of this program, of course, if you're getting more renewable energy, is you're reducing greenhouse gases. And for those communities that have climate action plans or thinking about climate action plans, this is probably the single most significant measure you can take to actually reduce emissions from the community. We've estimated about a 10% reduction in the county's greenhouse gas emissions if we go to 50% renewable. So that's the benefit side. That's why communities are getting excited about this. And the pickup of this program statewide is just tremendous now. I think almost every county has a program that's in some form of development. Cities across the state are doing this. There are risks, of course. And one of the key one is what happens if you start losing too many customers? Because you do have fixed administrative costs. And if you have to spread those administrative costs over a smaller
Did you hear
pool,
that?
a smaller rate base, that could increase rates. And so you want to avoid losing customers to Southern California Edison. And the way you do that is by maintaining positive rates and going through the other strategies and really building up the cash reserves. I think that's an important one. It's a manageable risk. Our consultant actually looked at a 20% opt-out rate for the program. So if 80%, we only had 80% of the customers as we could it still be economic? And the determination was that it would be. Across the state to date, the highest level of opt-out is about 7%. So we've got, I think, a safe margin there. If our program gets an opt-out rate that's more than the state average of about 7%, it's still manageable from an economic standpoint. The other is we may not actually compete very well. And this is where you really do have to have a deep understanding of power markets and the power utility industry. We're fortunate that we have, and he's here tonight, working with us, the former executive director of the Southern California Public Power Authority, Bill Carnahan, created a JPA of cities, actually ran public power programs. And it's that sort of level of expertise going into the program that helps you manage the kinds of risks that come up with regard to competition. So, and Joe Galliani mentioned the exit charge. That's one thing to be aware of, is that can make you non-competitive. The other is just state policy. And the goal, of course, would be that any state policy would, in fact, apply across the board to investor-owned utilities equally to CCAs, but certainly have to keep an eye on.
Their answer is more of the state. That's their answer. We are, in fact, managing the risk that the state could somehow change the rules to make CCAs less favorable. So frequently in my conversations with city councils, and again, appreciate the time tonight, two big questions come up. What happens to any franchise fees you may have, and what happens to any utility user taxes you may have? With franchise